I just got done watching the first episode of the Halo TV show on Paramount Plus, and I have things to say. I'm not going to dive into spoilers right away. I will tell you when, so I'm going to go over some of the basic stuff here first. First and foremost, I think one of the most apparent things about the show that surprised me was the level of violence. We didn't really, I guess we saw a little bit of taste in it in the trailers and the teasers and such, but I was pleasantly surprised. I like that stuff, right? Like I do. I like my violent TV shows. Shows like, The Boys, like things like that. I like some good gore in my TV shows, and I think it plays well for what is being depicted in the show. I did get my information relatively correct in my predictions video. I just had it kind of backwards. So what I said was that the Spartans were attacking insurrectionists to show what the Spartans do, and then the Covenant arrive, and then the mission changes. Chief and Silver Team are going to be quelling this insurrection, and during that, the Covenant attack, and their priorities change on the fly. I got that kind of backwards, but I'm pretty sure I got almost everything else correct. I am mildly disappointed that we didn't see that. We've never really seen, other than in the books, we've never seen Spartans fighting insurrectionists. And that's kind of the story of the origins of Spartans and Halo, and that's so important. They did do a good job of at least talking about it a lot and talking about the politics around that, but I think it would have been much, much more effective to have started it like I said. I can see why they didn't for various reasons. Maybe that is kind of the sacred code that they don't ever show that. I still want it. I still want it in the games. I think it would be so effective. I still think the Halo games should do a Gears of War style segment where you start, the mission 1 is replaying old missions, right? Old things, like playing the story of Halo, just level after level, fighting insurrectionists as Spartans and stuff. But I hope at least we'll inevitably see that in the games and in this universe, but looks like that's not going to happen in the show. Not necessarily, but it was cool seeing the siege of Madrigal. It's very clear to me that what did kind of pay off, and this is going to be controversial, was the fact that they deviated so much from the original Halo story. We're going to talk about the spoiler side of that eventually, but right now, they had to get a lot done in one episode. They had to establish a lot, and that's always tough because at the end of the day, the TV and movie and Hollywood medium isn't gaming. There are things that don't cross over. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't have gone word for word, shot for shot, what happens in Halo CE. But they, again, it's a stylistic choice at the end of the day, but I at least give them credit that doesn't always translate. It's a reason it still hasn't to this day. That still hasn't been a one-for-one game to movie adaptation that's like the exact same. Because it doesn't really work. Like, even for instance, during the siege, it stood out to me, unfortunately, and I'm glad they didn't overdo it. I thought I would be annoyed by the first-person segments. I thought they would feel shoehorned. They generally don't. Sometimes I find they're relatively effective. The one time it stood out to me was when Chief's shield was recharging. And I get that they had to quickly, visually, audibly explain what the shield is and that it recharges and such. And that's kind of important to know as like a new watcher. But I don't know, there was something weird about it because that's a game mechanic, right? It's a game mechanic that your shield goes down, you got to hide behind cover, and you got to feel that tension. And so I guess they have to bring that back, and I'm sure they will. I don't know. This is the only time so far that I was like, that felt weird. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I did appreciate some of the sound effects here. I like that there's an elite that cloaks, and it's the wow. I was like, okay, there's little things here and there. Appreciate that. There's that line relatively early on when they're in the cave, when the Spartan says, "This is not a natural formation." I was like, that's kind of fun that they slipped that in there. And these references, I think, are good and important, and you need to kind of keep that connection there, grounded. I'm trying to think if there's much else I can say without diving too far. I'm looking at my notes here. Okay, I got a few more things I can say before we talk about spoilers. The actors, generally, I'm quite fond of overall. I think Halsey's she does a good job of being Halsey, right? Of that like kind of smiley, not caring, like she has she does such a good job, in my opinion, of portraying almost that narcissism, right? That lack of care. I think that's interesting. I think that's relatively well done. I like the Keyses. Obviously, they deviated there, Keys visually. But, I hope my big concern about the Keyses, my big concern is that, who are they? If, I'm going as much as possible. I watched this whole episode just kind of pretending I didn't know anything about Halo, right? And I think that's important, especially for episode 1. You're establishing a lot, especially for new viewers. So there's always going to have to be that sometimes mildly awkward, on the nose dialogue. You'd be like, what's our goal here? Our goal is this, right? It's historical. It's kind of what again, you don't have to do that, but it is done. It is something that happens. Who are the Keyses? We understand their roles to an extent. If I knew nothing, I would just say, they're commander types, and clearly they're related. And that's it, right? Like how much are we going to see? I mean, they're clearly very important characters. Are we going to learn about Keyes as the captain, like as a pilot, right? Like, how's that going to come in? Is it ever going to come in? That's kind of weird to me. I felt like we didn't get enough of that, so I hope to see more of that, because obviously Keyes is, especially if we're talking about Halo CE, right? One of the main characters, a very, very important, top 3 important characters in Halo CE. Very important. Does a lot of story things in Halo CE. Especially with the flood and the like. I loved the action. I thought the action I love the choreography of the Spartans. I thought was really cool. There was a few times just that, they're flipping around, and then the violent, one pop to the face. There's some cool stuff. I'm like, yeah, I want to see more of that. That's great. The VFX was generally good, other than the elites. I think and then the occasional quick Spartan movement. It took me out. It wasn't terrible by any means. We've seen worse. It was passable. I hope that gets better, because on the other hand, the VFX of ships, space stuff, cities, beautiful. Loved it. Love that stuff. Really love that stuff. Thought it looked great. Thought it looked super great. But almost every time I saw an elite, except, literally, I can't, specifically elites, I thought were the weakest VFX. And that's tough, because they're very important. So I don't know what happened there, but I hope it gets better. That pulled me out. And at least, the good news is I think pretty much of the whole episode, that's the only part that pulled me out. It's an hour-long episode for the first one, and it's crazy how much misinformation there was out there. I heard everybody say every episode was 30 minutes. I heard people say story beats that never happened. Like, there was just everywhere. It was and I mean, I guess my fault for reading comments anywhere on any platform. But, the salty Halo fans, as we tend to be, were just spouting nonsense over and over and over and over again. That's all I'm going to say, non-spoilery. So if you haven't watched it yet, watch it, come back. We're gonna talk spoilers. It's worth it. Spoilers. So I don't know why I didn't expect this, but it's cool that they are going with the whole humans are Forerunner route. I don't know why I didn't think of that or expect that, because that's such a core tenet of Halo, and that's what I'm fascinated by here. I'm fascinated on what ideas they keep and what they modify slightly. So, the whole notion of Master Chief touching the artifact and the elite going like, what in the bejesus is happening here? I liked that. And then when you're on High Charity and even the Prophets look good. I think the Prophet VFX looks fine as well. And all that. And so what happened to the elites? I can't be the only one here that thinks the elites were the weakest VFX. I'm not going to dwell on it. But I thought the prophets looked great. And then talking to, I can't even think of her name, but it's Mercy, talking to the human Covenant lady. And they mention how she also has the power to activate Forerunner artifacts. So they are going with that route. So I'm super curious now, especially now that season 2 is also, it's been renewed for season 2, how much they dive down that path. Forerunners, Flood? What about Flood? Is that going to be a beat that stays, right? It certainly must, right? Because I think pound for pound, even though obviously, rather than starting the show, coming out of orbit and Captain Keys, you know, we made a blind jump, right? That whole thing. Obviously now it's different. Obviously now it's, they still stumble upon Halo, kind of, right? Ish. I don't know. We'll see how that goes, but realistically, not too much has been altered in the Halo story. And I might eat my own words here. There's obviously Hollywood flair to it, but there's some core tenets to the Halo story that you couldn't get rid of. You still have Spartans being kidnapped at a young age. You still have the Forerunner stuff, Halsey. There's a lot, the Insurrectionists. There's a lot there that is still very true, remains true. And so I think a lot of people's fear in that sense was baseless. And this is something that's going to be, I still think it's going to be contentious, as is with every single fandom in history, right? You modify a story, make it Hollywoodized, everyone's going to be mad, and it's inevitable, right? Anything. If it's not word for word, if the characters don't look exactly as they do in other mediums. We're seeing this with Star Wars, right? Where like a character's head changed from this to this, and everyone's like, Star Wars is ruined! Right? Like it's funny. So again, I'm trying to look at all this from just like a new watcher kind of perspective, and because you always got to consider that angle. I mean, in theory, a lot of new watchers, they're pushing this show everywhere. The ads for this are, in New York, like Times Square. I saw them on in my condo lobby. I was at a wedding recently, and it was on TV there too. I'm like, the Leonardo DiCaprio gif. I don't know if anybody caught this, but there's a reference to Commander Shepard. 100% intentional. Listen to this. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Master Chief's face. I guessed it. Again, we're gonna, let me have this. I got a lot right. My thought for this is that Master Chief won't always have a helmet on, and dubbing the main character is a tough call. Obviously, you can do it when the helmet is on, but again, that's just my thought that they're gonna be showing Chief's face. I think they knew very early on that they wanted to do this. They wanted to de-helmet Chief. It's tough. It's going to be contentious. People are going to be mad. I have not looked online yet. I know people are going to be mad. They also knew that they had to do this in episode 1. If they unmasked Chief in later episodes, people would have been so much madder. I'm certain of it. Get it out of the way. Episode 1, Chief will appear helmetless sometimes. I hope now, and honestly, even in that segment, I think they did it too much. They did it too long. I hope they don't do it much. I hope it's just used for effect. And he killed it. Don't get me wrong. Pablo nailed it. I think he did a great job. I think he's a great actor. Honestly, I thought he did a very good job. Really just gave that humanity to Chief, which seems to be an angle there. I don't think they should do it much. I think they should. And, this feels very much, we got Mandalorian-esque vibes here. I think they should be very careful because Chief is so powerful in just those head movements and those nuances that don't overdo it, please. If we see him helmetless in like every episode, I won't like that. I'll say it. I'm okay with him being helmetless in this TV show. I'm fine with it. But not much. Hopefully not much. Now, I don't think this about the other Spartans, but I think, for whatever reason, it feels like Chief doesn't have the weight to him. And obviously he doesn't, right? It's like a rubber suit and the like, right? But when I watch the other Spartans walk, to me, it does feel like I don't know, maybe it's their swagger. Chief's, they have that clump when he's walking around, but he doesn't feel like he has the weight. There's a few scenes in the ship where maybe he's walking too fast or something, but I don't think he does a good job of portraying the weight of Chief, which is tough too, because Spartans are supposed to also move fast despite their weight. He doesn't feel it. But again, seeing those other Spartans, especially, oh my God, that like later on scene with that, I loved the entire ending of this episode. I loved it so much, with the Halsey telling the Spartans that they're to shoot allies and them stomping down the hallway there. What a cool shot, dude. Oh, I really liked that. And again, the fact like they had weight, and I loved the power they had between all the Marines. Woo! Really liked that. Really, really big fan. I thought that was great. Honestly, I don't know if I have too much else to say about this episode, positive or negative, realistically. We could just, I can sit here analyzing scene by scene. I don't think that's interesting. I think kind of just getting my whatever's really on the top of my mind out. I want to see what comes next. I think I read, the little previews I did skim before this. A few of them mentioned, that people took this the wrong way, that this is setting things up nicely. People are like, oh, I wish the first episode was just the best ever. I think it was good. I think it was quite good. Realistically, at the very least, this is passable. At the bottom, I think it did much better job than passable, personally. I think it was quite strong. It wasn't inherently the most unique tale or anything I've ever seen, with twists and turns. You had to set a lot up, a lot of characters and stuff, and world to build. But I am really impressed. Yeah, I'm excited to see what's next. And I think if it is successful, and I hope it is, obviously they'll get more budget. They'll be able to do so much more with it. They'll take the feedback required and continue making something awesome, and hopefully introduce more people to Halo, because it's cool. Again, how many times have games to TV to movies to whatever just flopped, and that we're finally coming around to making it work? And is that a credit to the fact that they're straying slightly from the game story? Maybe. They're establishing a lot, and in some ways they're doing it much faster than the games ever could, right? Because you're supposed to, how long are games, right? Like hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. You're spending 8 to 10 hours or whatever on one game. They're just kind of ripping it off and getting it out of the way. And I like the Chief as a rebel angle, which is more Halo 5's advertising. I was going to say Halo 5, but, a little bit. Halo 5's advertising. I'm curious to see how far that goes, right? Because is now the whole show going to be Chief against humanity? I hope not, because there's so much cool stuff to explore. And then Halo itself, getting to all that and how Halo's explored, and there's got to be Flood. Oh, yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. So I'm curious your guys' thoughts. I will read the comments. Please, good Lord. I'm not even going to say keep it civil, because obviously keep it civil, but use your brain. I know we're on the internet and these are internet comments. Don't be an idiot. That's all I got to say. Let me know if you want me to keep doing these. I can essentially do these mini opinion reviews of every episode if you'd like that. I'd like it, especially if it's like this where I'm just kind of riffing and I'm not diving too deep into every shot, just talking. Gladly. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Can't wait for the next episode, and I will see you next video.